In it and in the other prayers of the mystics there is scarcely a petition. There is never a word of the theory that God's dealings with us are to show his power, still less of the theory. Everything is sketchy. The world does nothing but sketch. I am of certain convinced that the greatest heroes are those who do their duty in the daily grind of domestic affairs whilst the world whirls as a maddening dreidel. If you knew how unreasonably sick people suffer from reasonable causes of distress, you would take more pains about all these things. Live life when you have it. Life is a splendid gift, there is nothing small about it. Rather, 10 times, die in the surf, heralding the way to a new world, than stand idly on the shore. The amount of relief and comfort experienced by the sick after the skin has been carefully washed and dried, is one of the commonest observations made at a sick bed. There is a physical, not moral, impossibility of supplying the wants of the intellect in the state of civilization at which we have arrived. What cruel mistakes are sometimes made by benevolent men and women in matters of business about which they can know nothing and think they know a great deal. Women dream till they have no longer the strength to dream. Those dreams against which they so struggle, so honestly, vigorously, and conscientiously, and so in vain. For it may safely be said, not that the habit of ready and correct observation will by itself make us useful nurses, but that without it we shall be useless with all our devotion. I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse. Instead of wishing to see more doctors made by women joining what there are, I wish to see as few doctors, either male or female, as possible. For, mark you, the women have made no improvement, they have only tried to be men. And they have only succeeded in being third-rate men. Mankind must make heaven before we can go to heaven, as the phrase is, in this world as in any other. She said the object and color in the materials around us actually have a physical effect on us, on how we feel. The craving for, the return of the day, which the sick so constantly evince, is generally nothing but the desire for light. There is no part of my life, upon which I can look back without pain. What the horrors of war are, no one can imagine. They are not wounds and blood and fever, spotted and low, or dysentery, chronic and acute, cold and heat and famine. They are intoxication, drunken brutality. Demoralization and disorder on the part of the inferior, jealousies, meanness, indifference, selfish brutality on the part of the superior. Apprehension, uncertainty, waiting, expectation, fear of surprise, do a patient more harm than any exertion. Remember, he is face to face with his enemy all the time. For the sick it is important to have the best. I did not think of going to give myself a position, but for the sake of common humanity. It is the unqualified result of all my experience with the sick that, second only to their need of fresh air, is their need of light. That, after a close room, what hurts them most is a dark room, and that it is not only light but direct sunlight they want. Never dispute with anybody who wishes to contradict you, says a most reasonable saint. So never lose an opportunity of urging a practical beginning, however small, For it is wonderful how often in such matters the mustard seed germinates and roots itself. The first possibility of rural cleanliness lies in water supply. To be a fellow worker with God is the highest aspiration of which we can conceive man capable. Women should have the true nurse calling, the good of the sick first, the second only the consideration of what is their place to do, and that women who want for a housemaid to do this or the charwoman to do that, when the patient is suffering, have not the making of a nurse in them. Asceticism is the trifling of an enthusiast with his power, a puerile coquetting with his selfishness or his vanity, in the absence of any sufficiently great object to employ the first or overcome the last. Hospitals are only an intermediate stage of civilization, never intended to take in the whole sick population. May we hope that the day will come, when every poor sick person will have the opportunity of a share in a district sick nurse at home. It is very well to say, be prudent, be careful, try to know each other. But how are you to know each other? No man, not even a doctor, ever gives any other definition of what a nurse should be than this: devoted and obedient. This definition would do just as well for a porter. It might even do for a horse. It would not do for a policeman. That, of his own good pleasure, he has predestined any souls to eternal damnation. The very elements of what constitutes good nursing are as little understood for the well as for the sick. The same laws of health, or of nursing, for they are in reality the same, obtain among the well as among the sick. To understand God's thoughts we must study statistics, for these are the measure of his purpose. By mortifying vanity we do ourselves no good. It is the want of interest in our life which produces it. By filling up that want of interest in our life we can alone remedy it. How very little can be done under the spirit of fear. I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought all to be distilled into actions which bring results. Let whoever is in charge keep this simple question in her head, not, how can I always do this right thing myself, but, how can I provide for this right thing to be always done? People say the effect is only on the mind. It is no such thing. The effect is on the body, too. Little as we know about the way in which we are affected by form, by color, and light, we do know this, that they have an actual physical effect. Variety of form and brilliancy of color in the objects presented to patients, are actual means of recovery. That religion is not devotion, but work and suffering for the love of God. This is the true doctrine of mystics. The world is put back by the death of everyone who has to sacrifice the development of his or her peculiar gifts to conventionality. Were there none who were discontented with what they have, the world would never reach anything better. I stand at the altar of the murdered men, and, while I live, I fight their cause.